All these difficult times, all these trials and tribulations that happen during it, that's the part you're going to remember the best, is how you overcame those things, what you learned from those things. They're what help you to grow. And even though it might not seem so relevant, going through these things, travel can be a great way for you to grow in other areas of your life as well, because it helps you to deal with uncertainty. It helps you to deal with, maybe being in the train station in Warsaw, not speaking Polish, having to figure out where can you catch your train. These sort of situations that then will apply to other challenges you're going to have in your life, whether you like it or not. Today, we are going to be bringing you guys some travel stories, not just the stories of us traveling together, but each of us has prepared one of our favorite or most iconic travel stories. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to take us, Ksenia, back to the year 2011, when I was an exchange student living in Mallorca. Mallorca is an island in Spain, in case anyone doesn't know it. It's part of what's called the Balearic Islands. There's at least 4 of them, 4 main ones anyway. And I was living with quite the intrepid roommate, and he had this idea that we should do a trip around another one of the islands called Formentera. And I was not quite as adventurous as he was, but I wanted to embrace more adventurism. I was living abroad. I was 21 years old. So I was at a point in my life where I was wanting to change my identity a bit and become someone who took more risks and so on.
I'm sure I'm butchering it. You described your roommate as intrepid?
Intrepid.
How was that?
Yeah. Intrepid means that someone is adventurous. They take risks. So when I was younger, I was never really much of a risk taker. I like to play it safe. Not always necessarily be in my comfort zone, but not do things that felt like they were dangerous or risky. And certainly this trip that I'm going to talk about was full of its risks and its uncertainties, its mysteries, its adventure. The place we wanted to go was this island, Formentera. And it's a small island off the coast of Ibiza. And we had this idealized vision of this island because there's a beer company in Spain called 𝗥𝗲𝗃𝗏. It's actually based here in Barcelona. And every year they do these commercials that usually they have them in these really fun locations, beach vacations, trying to capture the energy of summer here. And one of the years they did the commercial in Formentera. So we used to watch this and would just be so taken aback by how beautiful this island is, the crystal clear waters, the pristine beaches. It really just looked like paradise. And he came up with this idea that let's kayak around the island. So the plan was to go to Ibiza, taking a ferry from Mallorca to Ibiza. In Ibiza, picking up the kayaks, crossing to Formentera. So they're close. I looked up before because I did not remember the distances.
Did you actually kayak from one island to another?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It says it's 11 to 12 kilometers. I think it was a bit more because that's as the bird flies, which means that if you went a straight line between the 2 closest points. But we had to go from one beach where the kayak renters left us to the nearest beach in Formentera. So it's probably a bit more than 12 kilometers. I believe none of us had any experience really kayaking, sea kayaking. And we started out with 10 of us going on this adventurous trip, signing up for this adventure.
Something tells me we started 10 of us. Somebody didn't reach their destination.
Exactly. It sounds like the beginning of a horror movie or something.
Yeah. We started 10 of us.
It wasn't that bad. This first crossing is where the ferries also go through. It's like a strait, and the ferries go through there to go from one island to the other. So we're dodging these big ferries, which you're down low when you're in a kayak. In case anyone's never been in a sea kayak, you're really low on the water and everything. It's probably easy for a big boat like that not to see you. So that was the first terrifying moment, but we made it across. We had our first experience. We warmed up. You could say like we got our sea arms. We say like you get your sea legs is when you're getting used to being on a boat, right? Because there's the movement and so on. So we could say, we could adjust that to we got our sea arms. And so it was good. It was a good first experience. We arrived in Formentera, safe in town, and we're ready to make the crossing. We have our first night. Of course, we didn't bring tents. We were going camping, but we didn't bring tents.
Nice. Hopefully it was warm.
Yeah, it was spring break and the weather can be iffy, which means that it's not so predictable. We were looking for a place to sleep, and on the beach we found a beach hut. Here they're called chiringuitos, and that's the closest translation in English. It's a place where normally during the summer, we have them here in Barcelona as well. You could go and have a beer or a meal right on the beach. And here they put them up and take them down. They put them up in the spring and take them down in the fall. But they have some that are permanent. So we found one of these that wasn't open. It's off season, right? Spring break, the tourist season hasn't started yet. We decided we'll just sleep here. We're protected in case it rains. We're protected a little bit from the elements, and we're all good. We went into the nearest town, which was a long walk. Went to the supermarket, picked up things for dinner, brought it back, and then we realized that we forgot to buy water on an island. We just had the water that we brought with us, so we had some to drink, but we had bought pasta to cook, which requires a lot of fresh water, and so we're like, oh, no big deal. We have tons of water. When you cook pasta, you put salt in the water anyway, so we'll just grab some seawater. So we did that. We cooked the pasta and sit down to eat. We all take our first bites, and it's just the look of shock on everyone's face as they take this first bite is the saltiest thing that I have ever eaten in my life, by far.
God. But you beautifully described the beach there. You said pristine.
Mm-hmm.
What is pristine?
Yeah, we'll use this a lot with beaches. Pristine beaches, meaning we might also say virgin beaches. So that means that they're unaffected by human damage. They're in a state that looks very well taken care of, very untouched, and so on.
Mm-hmm. The best beach I was taken aback by, or I was enchanted by, was in Brazil. I don't remember the name now. It was 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶𝗀𝗵, something like that.
You got it.
Yeah. So yeah, it was this exactly like you described. The sand was crystal white and crystal clear water, and it was very, very like pristine, like virgin, like you were describing exactly those words.
That first night we had a squall blew over, which means a big storm. So what we were planning this trip to go around the island kayak, and all of a sudden we're stranded. We had to weather the storm. We had to wait until the storm passed so that we could continue our journey. And so we found some ways to entertain ourselves on the beach. We were going in and out of the town to pick up supplies, to eat, and so on. But it's kind of the days were passing, the storm wasn't passing, and so on. And this is where we started losing people. People started deciding they're going to take the ferry back to 𝗏𝗟𝗃 and take their kayaks and so on. And in the end, 4 of us just remained that we're like, we're going to do this. We're going to wait out. We're going to see if we can do it. And sure enough, the storm eventually passed after a few days. It was actually a blessing that we had some of these days because we could kind of stake out the island, find different places where we could camp at our different stops. Yeah, it wasn't as we had originally planned. Things did not go as planned.
Yeah. Does stake out mean to explore?
Stake out means to look around, to see the lay of the land, to figure things out in this sort of sense. So you might, police is stake out, for example, a place where they know criminals are hiding. We've all seen this probably in a show or a movie where they'll sit in the car and they have their fast food and their drinks and their coffee, and they're just there waiting, trying to see what the criminals are doing.
Did you have some pasta left for those next couple of days?
So, I don't remember exactly what we eat, but I remember a lot of canned tuna and a lot of hard-boiled eggs.
Yeah.
Lots of salty
Those are the
grits.
easiest.
But I can guarantee we did not forget to buy water again at the supermarket. We loaded up.
What you brought from this experience, your takeaway was also that no matter how good and thoroughly you plan, something may go wrong. So, right, you should always have maybe plan B, or like be open for these new experiences and
embrace the adventure.
Be flexible and like react, like how you call that when you're flexible and you have like quick reaction to change your plans, right?
Resourceful, maybe. We even have an expression that we say, best laid plans. It's like when someone says they had all these plans and nothing went as expected, it's like best laid plans. Just meaning that you plan for things, but things don't always go as we plan, right? We were able to wait out the storm, and we're like, okay, there were 4 of us left. We're going to finally do this. It was me and an American friend that were in one kayak, as they were tandem kayaks, and our friends that were both Spanish and they were more athletic than we were. That's also worth noting in another kayak. So the first day, I mean, an important parenthesis here was we were planning to do this in about a week, and we had to reduce to 3 days, meaning that the distances were a lot longer. 69 kilometers around Formentera. That probably originally would have been 8, 9, 10 kilometers per day, which is totally doable for someone even who doesn't have a lot of experience paddling in a kayak. But it ended up being that we had to do more like 33 kilometers per day, which is a lot, being that we just did the crossing, which was 12 kilometers.
You had quite a workout.
Yeah. And I'm in better shape now than I was back then, but
No. I just wanted to say that you mentioned that you were not so athletic as your friends, but I'm sure after that journey, you were more fit,
most
more
definitely.
in shape.
So the first day too was the longest. So I don't know if that was the best planning, but it had to be that way because we had to go across one of the main capes of Formentera. And this was also the most tricky or dangerous part of the journey because the weather going around this cape, not the weather, but the waves, the water conditions going around this cape could be quite turbulent, would be the word. We start around the cape, and the first thing that happens is our friends that are in the other kayak, they're maybe 10, 15 meters ahead of us. Right by their kayak, we see a dolphin leap out of the water, right next to them.
So nice.
It sounds really nice, but it's terrifying because you're right on the water. It's this huge sea animal leaping out of the water right by you. Yeah, and you have no power, right? Compared to a dolphin in the water. Not that dolphins attack humans or anything, but they could be curious and maybe they come up and they knock you out of the kayak. What are you going to do?
Too playful dolphin.
Luckily, that was the only one. And in retrospect, looking back, that was really cool to be there in the water and to see a dolphin. And I'm sure it just heard these sounds and saw these figures above it and was curious, right? Dolphins are
in
playful.
Wild nature, right? It's not like you go to that aquarium or terrarium to see them.
Right. And we made it around. So it was this part where, I'm kind of like praying in my head through this crazy water going around the cape, but we made it around and the water calmed down. And then we just had it was more peaceful water, but it was a long stretch that we had to cross a bay to the place that we had staked out to stay in that night.
You repeated several times this word cape. I don't know if it's easy to explain that word because it's just like a geographical notion, right? But could you try to explain what's the cape and also the bay? You just mentioned the word bay.
I don't know if I'm going to get the definition of what a cape is exactly, right? Because I can
difficult.
imagine in my head what a cape was there. And I can think of Cape Town, for example. I believe it's a piece of land that's jutting out into the water, which means it's sticking out into the water.
It's like a bump in the land.
Exactly. And a bay it's like where the land curves and there's water that sort of enters in from the sea or the ocean. And bay tends to be more tranquil than the open water. We'd call the open water is when you're out on the sea and the water's more crazy, it's more wild. Then we keep going. And at this point, my arms are dead. I'm just paddling out of pure momentum.
Yeah.
It just becomes this thing of perseverance of if I stop, I'm not going to be able to continue again. So I can't stop. We get to the beach. I can barely lift my bag, but like, okay, we made it. First day is done. I'm already thinking like, how am I going to continue going tomorrow? But I was trying not to think about it and just one thing at a time, one foot in front of the other, right? So the place we stayed, this is the other fun part of the story. We had, as I mentioned, staked out before when we had the car. We went to this beautiful beach and there was a hotel there and the hotel was closed for the season as well. And we're wandering around the premises of the hotel. I was just being curious and I saw that behind the bar, there was a sliding window of sorts. It's like one of those bar windows where maybe they would pass bottles or something from another room. And I saw it was, I slid it and I saw that it was open and I decided to crawl through and could like open a door so my friends could come in. We're like, there's no one here. It seems like it's a nice place to stay away from the elements and the rain and everything. And so that's where we decided to stay the first night. We left the door open so we could get in and the door opened to a lobby and there was a second floor of the lobby. So that's where we set up all of our things.
So you illegally penetrated into a hotel.
Yeah, it's small,
Kind
a small breaking of the law. And we slept there. The next morning, I'm woken up to hearing keys in the door downstairs and hearing footsteps coming up the stairs.
Now the horror movie begins.
And there's a guy that comes through. He sees us. He looks at us and he keeps walking into the next room. And then he comes back and he's like, "What are you guys doing here?" And we explained to him that, we're doing this trip. We don't have anywhere to stay and everything. We saw that it was open. We're so sorry and everything. And he's like, "Oh." And he went back downstairs. And then he comes back upstairs and he's like, "You're not supposed to be here. It's okay. The place is being remodeled. So just don't let anyone else see you. Do you need anything? Do you need me to bring you more blankets?" And we're just like all shocked, like,
So
"No, we're
kind,
leaving." Like, yeah, it's super kind. We were just like panicked that he's going to call the police or something. We're going to end up in a jail on this island. But luckily, everything ended up well. You have to believe in
It would be another story.
generosity of humanity.
Yeah, that was so kind of him, right?
Do you know what a squatter is? Have you heard that term before?
Squatter.
Like a squat, like you do an exercise, you do squats.
Yeah.
But this is a squatter is a person who lives illegally in an uninhabited building. So I brought that word up because we were kind of squatting in this hotel.
Yeah, nice word.
So the rest of the story is pretty smooth sailing as far as things go. No other big events like that. No other crazy water. No other large sea mammals. The next day, I remember we found like a lovely cave, and it was much more tranquil to our rhythm because we were sore, but it was also that thing that we've kind of been warmed up from the first really difficult day. We camped again, and I just remember a lot of mosquitoes that last night, but then we made the final crossing, managed not to get hit by any fairies, and then, we arrived back in Ibiza. It's this huge sense of accomplishment, elation, and it's like, we did it. We survived all of the salty meals of tuna and hard-boiled eggs. we managed not to get killed by anything.
What a story.
Yeah. Now when I think back on any of those things, I laugh about it because it was just not very well planned the way that we did it. None of us had real experience. Of course, it was a bit crazy, but it was also just this amazing adventure, a lot of good times, a lot of the four of us laughing together in these different situations. And it's all, when you're in those things, you always just have to embrace it. You have to embrace the unexpected because ultimately it's going to be some of the best memories of your life come out of those experiences where things don't go as planned, but you learn to make the best of it anyway.
I bet you wouldn't change anything if you could, right?
Most definitely not. It's one of my most fond memories of my young life, I would say.
And now you have a story to tell, right?
Exactly. Stories are such a magical way to connect with someone. Travel stories, especially, because most people listening to this, I'm sure, have some sort of passion for travel. A lot of us learn English because we want to travel or for our travels, right? So the reason I bring this up is that if you want to practice your English, travel stories can be a great go-to. And if you want to do this, there's no better place than the RealLife English app, which is the only place where anytime, anywhere, you can just press a button and instantly be connected to another English speaker in another part of the world for a fun and dynamic conversation. So why not go find someone that you can share your favorite travel story with?
Share your crazy stories.
Hopefully some of them are crazy.
Yeah.
And that said, we have a shout out to a very special podcast listener and app user.
Okay, and our today's shout out is from AAZ. And they wrote us, "As an avid language learner, I have tried numerous apps and resources to improve my English skills, but none have matched the sheer brilliance and effectiveness of the RealLife app."
Ooh, that's such sweet words, AZ or AAZ. So they use some nice vocabulary here. They said avid language learner. What does it mean if you do something avidly?
Avid here means enthusiastic.
You might be an avid reader, meaning you love to read, right? And they also said that none have matched the sheer brilliance. What does that mean, sheer brilliance?
Sheer brilliance. It's sheer used here to like emphasize. It's just like to the full extent, right? Brilliance to the fullest extent. Sheer brilliance. You can say there is a common collocation, sheer joy. Just like,
nice
yeah, it means like, yeah, joy to its fullest.
Let's turn the tables, Ksenia, and hear your favorite travel story. I don't know if it's your favorite or...
This summer, unexpectedly, turned to be very eventful for me. Like I really had a kaleidoscope of experiences, of trips, short and long. It all started with our trip to Peru. So crossing the ocean, layovers, taking like, a couple of flights. And then I also took some shorter trips here in Ukraine. And why I said unexpected, and it's really hard to believe actually, because this couldn't be the harder time for us to travel from Ukraine. So many obstacles right now. We cannot fly from Ukraine now. So every time I take a trip, if it's a foreign country, if I go abroad, I should first get to Poland and there take my flight. So it adds a couple of stops and couple of unexpected little stories. And yeah, plans are always have to be adjusted. And this is exactly what happened almost in every trip this summer to me. So it will be a chain of stories, how I adjusted my plans, how I was adjusting my plans to reach my final destination. Yeah.
So you said you had a kaleidoscope of different experiences. I believe that's what you said. What does that mean, kaleidoscope?
So the kaleidoscope is a toy in a form of a tube with mirrors and multicolored pieces of glass or plastic. And when you turn the mirrors, the tube, they change patterns. So every time you see a new pattern with those multicolored glasses, it's very beautiful. I really like kaleidoscopes.
It's very psychedelic, as my parents might say, because I believe it was a toy that was invented in the 60s and
maybe, yeah.
It's fitting.
So when you say this phrase, the kaleidoscope of experiences, you mean that you have a big variety of something.
There's another nice similar one. I'm not sure if you've heard when you say a potpourri.
Oh,
potpourri of experiences or a potpourri of different types of people at the party.
Uh-huh.
Potpourri literally comes from French, I believe the word, and it's something that people might have in their bathroom. For instance, it's a bunch of fragrant, dried things. I'm not sure exactly what you use here, but this mix of different things can make a very tantalizing, sensual aroma.
Ooh, tantalizing. What is tantalizing?
Yeah. Tantalizing meaning that it's a nice experience for the senses. So it makes a tantalizing aroma, this mix of different things. And we'll use this figuratively to mean a mix of different people, a mix of different experiences, and so on.
Summer started with an amazing trip to Peru. I could never imagine I would find myself there in Latin America, in Machu Picchu and everything. So when it was time to come back home, and I called my brother asking how Mira is going, because in order to take this trip to Peru, I had to leave my daughter with my brother, who is currently living in Denmark. And he surprises me with the news that their daughter brought chickenpox from kindergarten, and now they are waiting for Mira to catch it because, if you know, it's a very easily contagious disease, and usually all kids have it in kindergartens.
And it's this one where you get many red spots all over your body that are very itchy, but you shouldn't itch them because they can scar.
Yeah,
it's very difficult, especially for kids to... Actually, they say it's much more difficult if you get it as an adult, which is why
that's why
people have chickenpox parties to have kids spread it to each other. But even when you're a kid, it's very difficult to have the self-control to not itch, right?
That's true. That's true. And exactly like you mentioned, because they say it's more difficult if you catch it as an adult, and I've never had a chickenpox.
You'd be like Phoebe in that episode of Friends with the oven mitts.
Yeah. So I was afraid to now come back, and I didn't know what to do. Either like to stay somewhere, like a quarantine, in another city or in another country, or at least to go back to Denmark, but rent an apartment and stay 2 weeks of quarantine there to wait until Mira, gets it. Luckily, I came in time, so I had enough time to take her back to Ukraine, because it has like the period of 21 days or something like that until it actually becomes contagious. So, and we safely came back to Ukraine, and yeah, there she got those spots you mentioned.
But you didn't catch it.
Yeah, I didn't catch it. I was so, nervous about it. Like, yeah, I didn't really want to catch chickenpox, but
What a relief.
yeah, what a relief it was. But then we planned another trip, and that trip was to Finland. It was a very quick notice my parents gave to me that we were planning a family get-together in Finland. And I really had little time to organize everything. And I believe I took it after. I made a pause here because I always want to say I take from, but the correct phrase is take after my granddad. So he is a seasoned traveler. Like, he traveled all his life, and the characteristic feature of him is that he always thoroughly planned the whole logistics. So he always buy tickets well in advance. He always rent houses to stay in. Like, he even make a small research of the city he visits to know where's the market, where's this, where's that. So he really does his homework well before each trip. And I think I took after him.
Let me ask you a question real quick. Few questions. You used some really nice vocabulary there. So you said that your grandfather is a seasoned traveler. What does it mean if someone is a seasoned something?
It's an experience, because of knowledge or because of age. Mostly it's about knowledge. Yeah, you do something many times, experience that, and you learn lessons. To buy water when you go to the island. Now you're a seasoned traveler.
More seasoned on kayak trips. Yeah, don't forget water.
So yeah.
And what does it? You said logistics. He plans out all the logistics.
So it's like, it refers to all those movements you make when you have to. For example, you get to an airport, then you should somehow get from the airport either to a railway station or directly to your hotel where you stay. So all those movements, or a better way to say that is
the transit.
Transits, yeah. I was looking for that. So we are getting to Poland. It took us, the trip there was very tiring. We were like, I don't know, squeezed like lemons with Mira, because it took us the whole night to stay at the customs border. And when we realized still in the morning hours at the customs that we're going to miss our flight because it took much longer than expected to cross the border, there came a moment where I had to make this decision. Oh my God, what I'm doing? Am I like buying new tickets or what? Or returning to Ukraine? Because it was obvious that we're not taking that flight. And now I know that Finland is not a very popular destination. It was so hard to find a way to get there. To make a long story short, I'll just add that I managed to change everything. So we were coming to Warsaw, where we originally had to take our flight. But I bought new tickets, and it was from Krakow. While still on the bus, I'm checking the trains. I find the train that goes from Warsaw to Krakow. It was a fast train. Everything suits me. But because it was traffic, and I don't live in Warsaw. I don't know how the traffic is there. So I make a decision that I will only buy tickets when I come to the train station. And now I know. Lesson learned. When I came to the train station with heavy luggage and Mira, I still was very optimistic that we can catch that train. I go online to buy tickets, and to my dismay, they closed the sales of tickets.
Oh, God.
It's just like, I'm still hopeful. I'm still optimistic. I go down to the tracks, and because I have this experience from Ukraine, some of the trains, especially those which circulate between the cities, you can still buy tickets on board the train. Like you go there and there is this conductor or this, I don't know how to call this person, but you can...
Ticket puncher maybe?
Ticket puncher, maybe. So you can buy tickets from this person. At the train station, there is this woman who's working there, and I come up to her and I'm trying to, like, I don't speak Polish and I use my English. I'm trying to ask her exactly the same question. Is it possible to get the train and buy the tickets there on the train? And her English was very limited. She was trying to explain me something, but the only word she was repeating over and over again was, "This is Pendolino train. This is Pendolino train." And I don't know, I have no clue what Pendolino train it is, but somehow, based on her tone and expression, I thought that, okay, maybe I cannot do that on a Pendolino train. I go to Google, I try to check what Pendolino train is. I see that it's a very beautiful, modern, stylish train. And I regret that we can miss it. But anyway, we were already tired, looking as deflated balloons with Mira, with our heavy luggage. And another thing for our listeners who like to travel and plan to travel to Warsaw, you should know that their railway station is not very user-friendly right now. I think they're making some adjustments right now. But to get to the track with the trains, you have first to go up with your heavy luggage on the above bridge, go along to your track line, and then go down. So it was very, very tiring.
Lots of ups and downs.
Yes, that's exactly. But luckily, we went to our favorite McDonald's, the place which will save you everywhere, right? And we had to stay there and wait for the next train. I bought the tickets and we didn't miss it, luckily. It was a very smooth ride. I now know what Pendolino is. They have this modern equipment, so they are kind of tilt when there is a curve and there is a turn, so you don't feel it. So it's just like a really smooth ride and a comfortable modern train. I really liked it.
It's funny that you mention all those trials and tribulations in the Warsaw train station, because I had a very similar story, which I won't share today. I'll leave it for another day or another podcast. But when I was there, it was 2008, I believe, 2007 maybe. And there was no one spoke English. No one. So it was a nightmare trying to find anything. And amazing. I love the stories, all the trials and tribulations, as we said. But in the end, you made it. You got to spend time with your family, right? As the caveat there for the audience to know that there was some treasure at the end of the rainbow, right?
Yeah, there was a highlight of that trip. Yeah.
Amazing. So before we wrap up today's lesson, we have a question from one of our listeners.
So we have a question from Frugina today. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. And the question is, it is so great to work on tiny details in English. Makes such a big difference and it takes so much effort, but it's totally worth it. You guys have to make a lesson about learning more languages at the same time. How is it possible to keep more languages in your head as an active language? Any idea is welcome.
I'm sure we could do a whole episode on that, but
that's true. That's true.
In a nutshell, right?
Yeah. Have you ever learned a couple languages simultaneously?
I have. I have the experience of learning French while living in Brazil and learning Catalan while living in Santiago, Chile. So that's really interesting when you're learning a language in a place that doesn't speak that language, and it's also doesn't speak your mother tongue, but helps too when you're younger and maybe have more free time. Which in the case of Chile, that was not the case. It was just something I was passionate about, so I was filling every nook and cranny of my day with exposure.
How do you keep words from different languages in your head?
So I'd be interested, Frugina. I'm probably not saying your name correctly. I'm really sorry, but I would be curious what other language besides English you want to learn and what your native language is, because I'd say it depends a lot. If you're from Poland and you're learning English, obviously, and then you want to also learn Mandarin, they're very different languages, Polish, English, and Mandarin. So you probably won't be confusing so much. But if you're learning Latin languages, which has been the case, most of the languages I speak are Latin languages, they have a lot of similarities. And in fact, I've just been coming back this year to learning Portuguese again. And at the beginning, I was making a lot of slips. I was confusing or speaking a lot of portuñol, as they say it, using a lot of Spanish words or Catalan words in Portuguese. But the best advice I can give is just daily practice, daily exposure. So both input and output. If you're speaking the language every day or writing every day, listening to things, watching things in the different languages, that's going to go a really long way for helping you to separate them out so that you're not confusing them. And you're sort of encapsulating those in different areas in your brain. So I'm still sometimes making these mistakes in Portuguese. It's natural because it's very similar. And if I don't know a word, usually I'll guess it from a word I know in Spanish or Catalan. But in general, I'm doing it a lot less than I was, a few months ago. So that's one of the most important things is just practice, 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 which sounds obvious. And we could do an entire episode on this. I'd be curious too, Ksenia, if you have anything you can chime in on there, because I know that you've also learned Spanish, you've learned German. So maybe you've had some experience of what it's like to learn various ones at the same time.
Yeah, I'll just add that it's also important to maybe learn languages which are not on a similar level. So it would be easier if, for example, your level of English is quite high right now, but then you start learning some language then you can easily learn two languages simultaneously, right? Because they won't, like you already speak English, but that second language will be something new and you will start from basic. But to start two new languages would be like really, really challenging.
I think that's a good advice, not to start two brand new languages at the same time. If you want to start a new one, maybe learn it for 3 months or 6 months and then start the next one once you've already gotten a good base. But at the exact same time, that would be a pickle. That would be a challenge. I have there's an interview that I did with a polyglot named Shannon Kenedy, and she had this spectacular, she's so organized. She had this spectacular project management system for her languages. She speaks something like 13 or 15 languages. I can't remember exactly at all different levels, but still. So I would recommend check out that interview I did with her because she explains how her whole system works, how she prioritizes different languages during the week and so on, so that she can be keeping up all the languages that she's wanting to maintain.
Yeah, and it's like the one thing is learning a language and another thing is to maintain a language.
Yeah.
So my takeaway from today would be that we should really enjoy the present moment. Don't stress out if something goes wrong, because most of the times we will have those stories, crazy or not so crazy, to tell to our friends, to our children when they grow up. Exactly thanks to those unplanned things that happen. They make our journeys, our traveling so much more bright, rich, unexpected, and you can really learn about yourself so much more in those situations.
I was going to say something very similar. You really need to embrace the journey. As we say in English, it's not the destination, but the journey. So it helps you to be a bit more resilient as a human being. All right. So if you are enjoying listening or watching this podcast, if you are getting some nice insights, some nice learnings out of these lessons that we're bringing for you every week, then a really great way that you can support us for free is to leave us a 5-star review in wherever you're listening to us, or if you use any podcast app, so like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can also, if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe so that you get alerted of all the new ones and like this video. And by doing those two things, you're also going to help tell YouTube that you're enjoying these so they can recommend it to other people who might also enjoy the lessons. And finally, remember that no matter what divides us, that which unites us is far greater. So traveling definitely is one of the best remedies for that, as both Ksenia and I can attest to. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah.
If you want to improve your English considerably, it's important that you see how language is used in various situations. And watching TV shows offers a great opportunity for that, because you have comedies, you have dramas, you have sci-fi shows, and in each one of these different stories and genres, there is a different kind of English being used there, different words, different vocabulary.